First thing we're going to go back to the traditions, the ancient traditions of the tithe. The overall tax burden is going to be 10, 15% of GDP, not 50%. We're going to have lower taxes, we're going to have simpler taxes. Government spending, therefore, cannot exceed that figure. Government is going to have to do less, and it's going to have to spend less, and it's going to have to spend better, and it's going to have to be more transparent, and it's going to have to be more accountable. You said to me government spending goes to 20, even 25% of GDP.
I think I
would go, yes, okay.
That might be like the most you can extract with the least plucking.
Absolutely.
It's 25% might be the optimal. It might be the top of the Laffer curve.
We don't need to go to the
But
top.
I don't think we do. I don't think we do either.
Why do we need to extract the most?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. That 10% number to me just seems reasonable. It just seems like, you know what, I'll give up a little bit to the common good. I wouldn't even bat an eye at it. I'd be happy to do it. And I think the majority of society probably would feel that way.
We also need to look at the outside of the IRS building in Washington, and which says taxation is the price we pay for a civilized society, and ask ourselves if we should reinscribe it with something like higher taxes do not lead to greater revenue.
Absolutely.
Lower taxes do.
Welcome back to another episode of Cypherpunk'd, and the final episode in our series on Dominic Frisby's book, Daylight Robbery. Welcome back, Dominic. I am sad to see you go because we've had so many great conversations, but this is the epic conclusion.
This is the conclusion, yeah. And listen, thank you so much for having me. I've had one of the best weeks I've ever had. Naples is an absolutely glorious place. You've all looked after me. So it's just been an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much. And it's been fun talking to you as well.
I've enjoyed every minute of our conversations on and off the air.
Myself as well. And so we're going to design utopia today. And Milton Friedman once said, I am in favor of cutting taxes under any circumstances and for any excuse, for any reason, whenever it's possible.
I love that.
And I love that too. And I think we're all agreed with Milton. But there has never been a civilization without taxation of some kind. It has never existed. They are, like death, inevitable. And you can have good ones and you can have bad ones. You can have good levels. You can have bad levels. What are good? What are bad? Depends on what your philosophy is. Different people struggle to agree. You can have voluntary taxes. You can have involuntary taxes. It's inevitable that some of our labour, some of our property is going to be taken for the common good. And the question is how much? Freedom and taxes, they are antithetical. So how you tax people is ultimately a question about your values, your philosophy. And do you want the social democratic model that much of Europe and the US has? And do you want government to be the main provider in things like welfare, education, and so on? If you do, we'll carry on as we are. But I don't think that's what most of us want. Some people want more taxes and an even more pervasive state. In my view, they're fools. I want lower taxes, greater individual freedom, more individual responsibility, and a belief that government is not the best means to provide welfare, education, and to equalize society.
I think history has really shown us that every time government gets involved in something, they just do it so much worse and at such a greater expense than individuals can do it in a society.
It amazes me that we even need to have the discussion.
Yeah.
So we're going to go the other way. We're going to look to Hong Kong.
This is so relevant right now because of everything that's happening with USAID and the government and America and taxes. I mean, like, you know, I just want to frame this chapter. And Dominic, I want you to have to think, like, if you were talking to the Doge team and the people in power in the US right now, what is give them your best advice from studying history here.
Okay. It's widely accepted that Hong Kong has the best tax system in the world. And Hong Kong has simple taxes and it has low taxes and the outcomes are better. It is the top 10 wealthiest country in the world. It has the best transport system in the world. It has great health. I think its people live longer than anywhere else in the world. It has great education. Hong Kong is the model, and it's proven. The fastest growing economy in the second half of the 20th century. No natural resources. So Hong Kong has to be what we copy. Now, it's hard because Hong Kong was a dictatorship, a colony, not a dictatorship, but a colony with a benevolent dictator. But in the developed world, tax accounts for between 40 and 60% of GDP, maybe even a little bit more if you factor in inflation. First thing we're going to go back to the traditions, the ancient traditions of the tithe. The overall tax burden is going to be 10, 15% of GDP, not 50%. We're going to have lower taxes. We're going to have simpler taxes. Government spending, therefore, cannot exceed that figure. Government is going to have to do less, and it's going to have to spend less, and it's going to have to spend better, and it's going to have to be more transparent, and it's going to have to be more accountable. If you said to me government spending goes to 20, even 25% of GDP,
I think
I would go, yes, okay.
Yeah. It seemed like that was, again, in studying history, I think that was like the South, like from the Civil War, like the South wasn't happy about paying any tariffs, but like at 25%, they were like, that was the compromise. There was no war. It didn't boil over until they went back to that 35 to 40%.
25%, it was happy to make, it saw that as its duty to the greater collective.
Yeah, exactly.
40% was taking the piss.
That might be like the most you can extract with the least plucking.
Absolutely.
It's 25% might be the optimal. It might be the top of the Laffer curve.
We don't need to go to the
but
top.
I don't think we do. I don't think we do either.
Why do we need to extract the most?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that history and you can learn so much from history, right? There's so many reasons why this idea of the tithe and these things keep repeating in different civilizations. That 10% number to me just seems reasonable. It just seems like, what, I'll give up a little bit to the common good, and like, that 10%, I wouldn't even bat an eye at it. I'd be happy to do it. And I think the majority of society probably would feel that way, I think.
And we also need to look at the outside of the IRS building in Washington, and which says taxation is the price we pay for a civilized society, and ask ourselves if we should reinscribe it with something like higher taxes do not lead to greater revenue.
Absolutely.
Lower taxes do. Lower taxes lead to greater revenue to the exchequer. And, you can quote JFK saying it, or you can quote Andrew Mellon saying it. There's lots of famous Americans who have said this. You can quote Milton Friedman saying it.
Oh, it looks like we can go all the way back to the ancient texts of Sumer to quote it. We can go to the fourth caliphate of the Muslim world who said it.
But we want to have, if it's America, we want to have a great American saying it.
That is true.
So there are income taxes in utopia. There is VAT and sales tax. There are, but they never exceed 15%. We're going to say 15%.
So altogether, it adds up to 10%, is what you're saying.
No, 10% is like, that would be taking us back to 1870 or 1900. It's unrealistic to expect that. We're going to compromise at 15.
Okay.
We're going to have some Pigouvian taxes, and this is the idea on activities that have negative outcomes. So, for example, pollution, smoking.
Okay.
Little fines. There's a few fines here and there. They're useful things. And Pigouvian revenue is channeled straight into the public activity where the damage is caused.
Exactly. So
smoking goes into treating lung cancer.
There you go.
And so on. I'm also thinking narcotics are legal in utopia. And then we can have flat Pigouvian taxes on narcotics that go into treating people, the consequences of addiction.
Yeah.
There is no corporation tax. No need for it. Dividends are taxed at the same rate as income. And the same rate that the income of corporate workers. I never understand why corporations get off paying income tax and corporate workers don't. But anyway, so
I think it's like double taxation. That's the idea.
Zero corporation tax will attract investment from abroad. And there's one tax that corporations will pay, and we're going to come to that in a moment, but it is not corporation tax. Because we want our businesses to be profitable. We do not want them to be hiding their profits and doing all that stuff. We want them to be profitable.
All these perverse incentives and hiding and all that stuff.
We are profitable and we are proud.
I like it.
We're putting that on the on the company's house on US. I don't know what you call company's house. The building where all the companies are registered. We have company's house in England.
The New York Stock Exchange, is that what you're talking about?
No, we have if you want to register a company, you have to register it at company's house.
Oh.
You don't have that in the States.
We don't.
So we are profitable and proud. There's no national insurance, no capital gains tax, no inheritance tax, no council tax, no stamp duty, no tariffs, no business rates, no television license, no vehicle excise. Maybe we want some road tax, because road tax pays for the roads. Airport passenger duty, fuel taxes, much lower. We want to get people traveling again.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get the economy mobile, lower fuel taxes, lower transport taxes. The tax code itself dramatically shrinks in size.
Hong Kong should be the model.
Yeah,
even
again,
shorter
Hong
than
Kong is the model. And one practical consequence of all of this is people are happier to pay. Evasion, there's less incentive.
There's
to
no
take
reason
the
to
risk
evade.
of not
Nobody
paying.
can. Yeah, exactly.
And
show me the incentives, and I'll show you the outcome.
To pay when there's more accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So, as the experience of Hong Kong proved, lower taxes bring in increased revenue and increased investment. In areas where government provides service, we're going to look, one of the incredible business models of the internet. People found it very hard to make the internet, turn an internet to profit. What worked for the internet was the subscription model. Works on Substack, it works on Netflix, it works on newspapers, it works on YouTube. It works in gyms, it works on aeroplanes. There's one basic level of government service that you get for free. Well, not for free, but you get, when you pay your minimum tax. It's a bit like an airline. The money they make on a first class seat is so much more than the money they make on a second class seat. But the cost of the airline a second class seat might be $500 and a first class seat might be $3,000. Well, the cost of the airline isn't an extra $2,500. It's mostly profit.
Yeah.
And, people are happy to pay for a first class seat for the status and extra service they get for being in first class, whatever. It doesn't make it much sense to me, but maybe it would if I was a cantillionaire. But my girlfriend, who isn't my girlfriend, who is my girlfriend, who isn't my girlfriend, always wants to travel club class and first class. So I'm like, can we not save the money and go in pauper class? But anyway. The Times, newspapers, it was the one finally newspapers could charge for their content. So we have a similar subscription in government services. And the first subscription, your membership of society, is to cover the basic costs of government, defense, infrastructure, police, and so on. If you must, a little bit of welfare and pensions, education. And then you get a fourth subscription for healthcare and related social services. And for each subscription, there has to be a clear statement of what is provided. What size of army? What size of health service?
Goes back to
what
this idea of
drugs,
transparency.
What kind of
we clearly don't
goods?
have.
And it's clear. And then if you want additional stuff, so, there's basic healthcare and then there's sort of luxury healthcare. You might get a really nice bed, or you might have some treatment for some really niche thing that other people go, well, is that really... were you really ill, or is that just something? So if you want the extra stuff, then you pay an extra charge. So, for example, in hospitals, you could have wards, and then if you want a private room, you pay an extra bit of money, and you get the private room, and you get the extra service.
Sounds like a free market problem, honestly.
Yeah, and so it's subscription and it's voluntary, and payment for services at the point of use is encouraged everywhere possible. You might not want to pay higher taxes, but you might happily pay a little bit extra for your friends or your family to get a private room in a hospital, or better food in the hospital, or whatever. And this is sort of we go like this. So we just follow the subscription model.
There's a couple Swiss provinces. Is it Lugano? Maybe it's a Luxembourg. There's somewhere in Switzerland where like you can live there, and like it doesn't matter how much money you make, you just pay a subscription fee per year. It's like $30,000. That's what you pay. That's your taxes. It never goes. If it goes up, it's because they need to hire a couple more security guards or whatever. But you're just paying for the services. You're not paying based on your income bracket. That's where I see the future going.
So the subscription model simplifies taxation. It simplifies welfare. It brings greater transparency. It raises more money from higher earners, which is one of the things the tax system is always trying to do, but by their own choice. And we have natural rather than arbitrarily imposed progressive taxes. But in addition to all of this, we have one new tax. And I call it location. What do I call it?
Land value tax.
No, I call it location usage tax. I'm specific about that. Location usage tax. And it is a tax based on the location of any ground that you use and own. Okay? And I don't call it land value tax. And it's the fairest tax I can think of. And it shifts the balance of taxation away from labor and onto capital. And so it rewards labor and it rewards productive activity. And the idea of this tax goes all the way back to the 17th century physiocrats who talked about government of nature. And there are two types of wealth. Wealth that's been made by man, and there's wealth that's been given to us by Mother Nature. You build a house, that's a man made that. The land underneath it, the airspace, the broadcast spectrums, mineral wealth, they've all occurred as a result of nature, oil under the ground and so on. Man-made wealth should belong to the person that made it or the person that then bought it because of the risks taken and all the rest of it. But natural wealth should be shared. And so if you build a house on a plot of land, you're improving it and the results of your endeavor should be rewarded. But the plot of land was always there.
Yeah.
And so
Seems
we're going to
very
look
fair.
at the unimproved value of land. Man didn't make the earth, Thomas Paine said. It's the value of the improvements only, not the earth itself, that is individual property.
You're getting rid of property taxes. This is what's replaced.
We don't have property
There
taxes.
you go. Beautiful. You
So
said you're adding another tax,
you've
but
got
the
two-
caveat is you're taking away a tax to add a more fair tax.
So I was in Palm Springs a couple of months ago, and you've just got these huge plots of land right in the middle of Palm Springs that are just totally undeveloped. And I go to my mum, who owns that? She goes, oh, it's the Indians. It's Indian land. And I said, well, why haven't they developed it? He said, well, they're so rich they don't need to. But you're just looking at this prime real estate that's just sitting there scrubland. So you've got two plots of land in a city centre, and they're identical. One is undeveloped scrub, and the other has a magnificent building on it. They would both be taxed at exactly the same rate because the building is as a result of human endeavour. The land, the only thing we consider is the land in its unimproved state. You could have a $10 million house on one. The other one could just be scrub. We're only concerned with the land, the value of the land. And as I say, the wealth that's come as a result of the building should be with the developer who took the risks or the person who then bought it off the. But if that undeveloped plot of land suddenly goes up in value because the city's growing and more people want to live there, or they've built a station right next door to it or something like that, then that's unearned wealth. So that value should be shared. And, often you see the value of land go up because somebody built a railway nearby. Well, the railway was built by public money. It wasn't due to the person who owned the land. So that unearned gain should be shared. And if you want exclusive use of a plot of land and you want the government to protect your title to that plot, then a fee based on the unimproved value should be paid to the community. And what fee? So you calculate the annual rental value of that plot in an unimproved state, and it's quite easy to calculate. House might cost $400,000 to build. The land itself might be worth $100,000. Thus, to buy the house on the open market would be $500,000, the house and the land. The annual rental value of that $100,000 plot in its unimproved state might be $10,000. So the fee payable for the exclusive use of the land would be a percentage of $10,000. If a train station's built nearby and the value of the plot might increase to $20,000 or $200,000, then the annual the value might go from $100,000 to $200,000. The annual rent might be $20,000. So the fee payable would be a portion of that. And it was a 19th century American economist called Henry George who popularized this tax. And he called it the single tax because it would replace all other taxes. And he wrote this book, Progress and Poverty. It sold millions of copies. It was a bestseller. He was a huge hero. And they even invented a board game to illustrate what he called the monopolization of land ownership. And it was called Monopoly, Well, it eventually evolved into monopoly. It got stolen. And today they call it land value tax. And I don't like it because rural landowners, farm owners always think they're going to be hammered. It's not. It's prime city centre real estate that takes the biggest thing because that's the land that everyone wants.
Yeah.
So I call it location usage tax. And effectively, it's a consumption tax because the more valuable the land you use and have exclusive rights to, the more you pay. And if you don't use it, you don't use any land at all, you don't pay any tax. So it's a usage tax. And it's been proven to work. They had it in Hong Kong.
It was called land value tax there.
They called it there. And 40% of Hong Kong revenue, 40% came from this land value tax. The city owned all the land and it leased it. And so that way, the increase in the value of the land, which came as a result of the industry of the people who shared rather than expropriate it, and it meant that 75% of Hong Kong land was preserved as parkland, open space. Hong Kong is tiny, but it's really good on parks. Only 25% is built. Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, they've all found a way to tax site value. And it's assisted, these are places where there's all been extraordinary economic growth. However, they have tried hundreds of times we're talking about utopia here. They have tried hundreds of times to get it over the line, and they never, in the West, they never get it over the line. David Lloyd George and Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, great quote. Roads are made, streets are made, services are improved, electric lights turn night into day, water is brought from reservoirs 100 miles off in the mountains, and all the while the landlord sits still. Every one of these improvements is affected by the labour and cost of other people and the taxpayers. To not one of those improvements does the land monopolist, as a land monopolist, contribute, and yet by every one of them is the value of his land enhanced. He renders no service to the community. He contributes nothing to the general welfare. He contributes nothing to the process from which his own enrichment is derived. But the House of Lords would not have it because they were all landowners. But this is utopia. We can do what we like. And so we don't want a society of homeowners sitting idly by while their houses go up in value at the expense of the next generation. We are designing a society in which productivity is reward, unearned wealth is not. And so we have this tax. And here's how it works. Every parcel of land in the country is assessed for its unimproved rental value. And this is the value of the land without any development of any kind. No building, no farm, no factory. You know, the oil, the rental value of an oil reserve is enormous, but somebody's got to take the risk discovering the oil. Somebody's got to take the risk building the oil things and everything. He gets all of that. But the rental value of the oil gets shared. So prime city sites and city centres will have a high rental value. And the land registry will have a record of who owns each plot of land. And the owner then pays an annual fee, which would be a percentage of the unimproved rental value. Here's the big question. What percentage of the unimproved rental value? And that depends on the society that you want. If you want a society with big government and large spending, then the percentage is high. If you want a government where it's minimal, all of that, then the percentage will be low. But it'll be determined by the political forces at the time. If there's an emergency, if we're in a war, then we need to pay higher taxes, whatever. And it comes down. But the tax is directly felt by the person that is paying it. It's not like inflation, which isn't felt.
Yeah,
it's felt at the
I'm gonna
time.
ask you about that.
And so the taxpayer, because he feels it, holds the government to account. And the government holds the taxpayer to account. It's kind of a naturally...
Adam Smith would be proud.
He would be indeed. Even Milton Friedman liked it. He called it the least bad tax.
The least bad tax is the way I think about it.
It's really simple. Once you've got the system in place, it's really simple to administer. You can't evade it. You can't, because the land's there.
Yeah.
If you're Google and you've got, your IP in one country and you're this in the other country, or you're Starbucks and you've got your IP in Holland, you're still using prime real estate in the town centre. Or in case of Google or Amazon, you're still using huge data centres, and that requires land. Or Google, you've got huge Amazon warehouses, Google data centres. So you're using the land. So and in case of Google, they probably have to pay something for the bandwidth they use. So these are all naturally occurring things. And so it makes these it sorts out the digital problem that we talked about of how international countries pay international corporations pay taxes in the countries in which they operate. It sorts out the borderless problem. And corporations use a lot of land to run their businesses. They pay a land value tax. They pay no corporation tax.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And if the business gets hard, then they just relocate somewhere else. And if they don't want to develop the land, then they sell it to someone who does want to develop it, and it causes the land to be developed. And so it's a naturally occurring thing, and it makes for a tax, and it makes for a much more efficient use of land. Land's the most basic wealth of all. It is also the most unequally distributed. Throughout the world, a few select individuals, corporations, governments own disproportionately large amounts of land. The royal family in the UK, I think the royal family owns 1/6 of the world's land surface. And it's like, fine, if you want to own all that land, pay tax on it. And if you don't, then sell it to someone who does. And it just, but the royal family is subsidized.
Yeah, they don't pay the tax.
No, they pay income tax, but they don't pay land tax on all the land there, and they get subsidies for it.
No property tax, yeah.
So it's, the worker is funding the asset owner in the case of the royal family. No, it's not fair. There's such a gap between the two.
Come on, Dominic. It's the divine right of kings and queens. You know that.
So it would change the way we think about land and land ownership, and it would change the way a society thinks and acts, because the rewards and incentives are so different. And endeavour will get rewarded everywhere in utopia. Land banking, as we call it in the UK, will not. And so no nation has ever had it in its purest form at the expense of all other taxes. But where nations have employed it at the expense of some other taxes, what they'll try and do in the UK is they'll add it in addition to other taxes, which is the worst thing you can do. But Hong Kong did it, Taiwan, South Korea, Denmark, New Zealand, Botswana, Estonia, bits of Australia. Wherever they've done it at the expense of other taxes, they've outperformed their neighbours.
That's the big question, though. The expense of other taxes.
Got to replace other taxes.
Got to replace all the other stuff.
And, you have lower levels of income tax, you have lower levels of VAT, and you get rid of all these stupid, complex side taxes.
Yeah.
And so...
Have you ever heard of, this is my favorite
And we're going to go to about, location usage tax amounts to about 1/3 of all government revenue. That's what we're aiming for.
I gotcha. Wow. Have you ever heard of tangible property tax?
No.
This is one of my favorite ones. You get just taxed just for owning something. It's like it's like 1%, but they hit me up on one of my, and again, this is just it's disproportionate tax on people who are operating in the physical realm, as opposed to, right to your point in the book, the digital realm, people who are digital nomads or who operate in cyberspace. But if you have like just a small business owner and you own like any small business, like they basically come and say, hey, what's the total value of everything you own? And you're going to pay us 1% of that every year. It's called a tangible property tax. I thought it was a scam. I thought it was like they called because I have a small business, and somebody at one point had called about it. And I'm like, is this a scam? Like, I thought it was a scam because it just sounded so ridiculous. Like, yeah, you got to give us me 1% of whatever the value is of what you own every year. And I'm like, is this real? I'm like asking my accountant, like, does this actually exist? Is this, or am I getting scammed? I thought, maybe somebody from some third world country is calling me to scam me. That's literally what I thought. And I said, this is so absurd and ridiculous that do you actually even own anything? I mean, it's...
Well, there is a little bit of that with land value tax or location usage tax, because people who no, this land is mine.
We're already paying property taxes anyway, so it's way worse.
We're getting rid of property taxes.
Yeah, it's basically it's a fraction of the cost of your property taxes because it's...
Well, it depends. Like if you've got, the prime downtown Naples real estate, it'll be quite high. But if you're out in the outskirts, it won't be.
But your property taxes at that prime real estate are already higher than it would be just for the land. Because say the land is $5 million. Say the land on Naples Bay, it might be a $5 million lot. The house you put on it is $7 million. So you're up to 12 to 15 million. You're getting taxed on that full 12 to 15 million.
I don't like that.
But if you were just getting taxed on the 5 million, it would still be a lot, but it would be much less.
Sure, and I don't like the fact that say you buy a plot of land for £1 million and you build a £4 million house.
Yeah.
And as a result of that £4 million house and the plot of land that's 1 million, the overall value of the thing is not 5 million, but it's 10 million. Because that's your markup.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And then they tax you on that.
And then suddenly you're taxed on a 10 million thing.
You're
So you're
100%
you're
right.
penalized for
100%
your
right.
endeavor.
You're 100% right. And just think about it. You're employing and hiring so many people, supporting so many families, the labor, the equipment, the architect, the designer, the interior designer, the people who make the tile, who put in the floors, who lay the bricks, who do the plumbing. I mean, all these people are living off of that
Economies start with
production,
home building.
right? So to penalize that, like, damn, I would have built a $5 million house, but I don't want to have that property tax bill. So you know what? I'm going to build uh, a house that's half the size, that's worth less. I'm going to hire half the number of people. I'm going to pay. So you're 100%. There's all these unforeseen, unintended consequences that these bureaucrats who think they know everything. I mean, they just miss all of this. And this is just one micro example of the unintended consequences from some of these terrible tax policies and just many taxes that we pay every day that we think are just normal, but that just have so many unforeseen, deleterious negative effects. And nowhere in history is that more apparent than through the observing the Fragrant Harbor and seeing how they did it in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. The other thing we're going to do, which wasn't possible in Hong Kong, but it is possible in the US and in the UK, is land value taxes are going to be levied locally. So a bit like you have with your states, each state can set its own tax thing. Land value taxes are levied locally to encourage regional competition.
I love it.
So if land value taxes are low in one place and they're high in another place, then everyone can move to where they're low, and and that will make that land more valuable.
We've seen that play out here. I mean, look at what's happening in Florida, and places like Texas. I mean,
that's one of the reasons the United States works so well, because you have tax competition between the
idea of federalism. Yeah.
But so we want to encourage that with the land value tax, with the location usage tax.
See, you got confused too.
I confused myself. And the other thing is with the local tax is you're just in a better position to monitor how it's spent, and that's got to be a good thing. So greater transparency as well, which is what the great Elon Musk is trying to give us. So
yeah, hopefully they end up watching this.
Yeah,
there's so much to be learned through history.
I hope so.
Somebody on the team.
I don't. The reality of new taxes is that people don't want them.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, you probably saw me there. I'm good at explaining stuff, but even I stumble over myself explaining location usage tax or land value tax. And so
the trick is you have to explain that it replaces everything.
But it has to be easy to explain. And I don't think we'll ever see it except in some bastardized form. But as I say, we're talking about utopia, so we can say what we like.
Oh, man. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I just thank everyone for listening, and thank you for giving me this platform, and thank you for this opportunity. I'm extremely grateful.
Wow, I'm extremely grateful you made this trip across the pond, and we got to go down so many rabbit holes. And your book is one of my favorite books because it just it gives you a different frame to view history. And when you look at thousands of years of activity, you really come back and see the role that taxes have played in shaping human society and civilization itself. So I just want to say thank you so much, Dominic. It's been an absolute pleasure for me to spend this week with you.
Thank you, sir.
And I hope you come back anytime.
I'll be back. I'm writing another book, so I'll be back. Thank you, sir.